Hi, this is Abby Main, and this is my data analysis project where I'm looking at seed preferences for birds. So as far as the background, a lot of people, especially in suburban America, really like to have backyard bird feeders, whether just for aesthetic reasons or they want to see a lot of birds or many other different reasons, or they think that they're helping the birds when we destroy a lot of their habitat with making so many lawns and other places like that. And they're just pretty, like you look kind of fancy if you have one. Um, so many different examples of backyard feeder food. You have sunflower, safflower, suet, corn, millet, peanuts, mealworms, fruit, and other types of seeds. You also have different types of specialized feeders. Like you don't have, a lot of people think that birds just eat seeds when that's just not true. You can have specialized one. Like this is apparently a mealworm feeder specifically for bluebirds. And that would be cool for your insectivores because I never see Eastern bluebirds around me. Um, and then you have the sugar water feeders to attract hummingbirds. I love having those. And then this I've never seen before either, but it's a fruit feeder for Baltimore Orioles. And then the woodpeckers really like the suet, so that's why a lot of people get those. I like having those, but I took them down for this project. Um, okay, so as far as conservation pros and cons of having these feeders, so I couldn't find too much literature that says there's a significant good or a significant bad of having backyard bird feeders. But a conservation pro would be that people, a study said that people become more connected with nature and therefore are more likely to care about conservation activism. I actually had an argument with a friend the other day about why I like she was concerned about the ethics of catch and release fishing, and I was saying, well, that's a first step for a lot of people to begin caring about conservation is the fascination that comes from understanding fish habitat and how fish work and how they think, learning where they're going to be. Um, and then cons obviously is the same with if you're feeding deer to bait them to hunt them. If you get a bunch of animals all together really closely, that can increase the risk of spreading disease. All right, so some common backyard birds in Ohio, and I put here the ones that I see by far the most in my yard. I see cardinals probably once a day. House sparrows and song sparrows I see all the time. Robins are everywhere, just hopping around. House finches are everywhere. I see my mom calls them those ugly blackbirds, the that bully the other birds, but a lot of common grackles around here. I do see mourning doves a lot too. They like to hang out in on the telephone wires. So yeah, these are pretty much the most common birds that I see around here. Also blue jays every once in a while. Okay, so the goal of my study. So two of the most popular seeds for bird feeders are sunflower and safflower, and I say popular as in they're most popular for humans to put out. So my question was, do seed-eating birds have a significant preference for one over the other? Here's my study site. This is my little neighborhood. This right here is my house. You can tell that I have a little bit, I don't know if you can see it too well. I have a little bit of a lawn and then it just goes into this woodlot. And behind that woodlot is this abandoned nursing home recreation area that people drop their trash and I call the city about and that kind of stuff. So as you can see, it's pretty residential with small little scattered woodlots everywhere. And it's Finneytown, Ohio, which is still within the main loop of what you would call Cincinnati area, but it's about 6 miles from downtown. There are some urban aspects, especially if you leave my street up here. But overall, I think most people would call it a suburban area. Um, and then here's my backyard. Please don't judge that I haven't it's a mess right here, as you can see. But this was kind of my view from when I was observing, because I realized that I really should stay in the house and keep the dogs in the house during this, so I'm not scaring any birds away. But there's the woodlot back there. And then here's the two bird feeders. On the left, I have the sunflower. On the right, I have the safflower. They're about a foot apart. Um, And yeah, so that was basically my setup. And it was very hard to observe from here because I had to basically be like this for the full 20 minutes, which was absolutely killing my neck. But it was just the best way I could think to do it. So observations were made over a period of 10 days in early April of 2024. Each observation lasted 20 minutes. They were conducted between 5 p.m. and sunset due to me just not being a morning person these days. Um, each bird that visited the feeders, I just recorded that it went there. I said what species it was, and then which bird food it was targeting. All right, so the overall general results were, as far as the number of different species that I saw on the sunflower, for each observation, I saw an average of 4.3 species, safflower 3.6. So we have the sunflower being the favored one there. And then for the number of individual birds, once again, the sunflowers favored. More birds approached the sunflower seeds at 22.1 birds, and then 13.6 for safflower. Some observations that I made. House finches were by far the favorite. House finches and all the sparrows showed up for most. I'm very bored of both of those birds at this point. American robins, which I don't think I've ever thought about the fact that, because I see them all the time, I've never thought about the fact that they actually never use my feeders because they just like to hang out on the ground and pick up their food and hop around and do their American robin thing. Blue jays just kind of, the only times blue jays showed up were just kind of to sit in the trees and kind of just observe the other birds. They didn't come over at all, so I'm assuming they weren't desperate for food because I do see blue jays. I have seen blue jays at my feeder before in the winter for sure. Common grackles, which I normally feel like they are bullies at the feeder, but they didn't really come over, and I saw them a lot. Um, Northern cardinals came a couple times, but for the most part, they were like they would just sit on the feeder and watch everybody else feed, and then they would go away. I was very fascinated by that. Mourning doves only fed off the ground, which I already knew that about them. They never go actually up to the feeder, but I couldn't record their data because I couldn't tell what they were eating from my angle. Tough titmice, they were cool. They would just show up real, which explains why I didn't realize how many there were around me until this class, but they were super quick to come, super quick to leave. Now, I know I said in both that the sunflower is more favored, but the question is it significant how much they favor the sunflower? As far as getting a lot of different species, yeah, the average and the median are better for sunflower, but it's really not a significant difference. The p-value is 0.195, which is greater than 0.05, our alpha level. So there's really not a significant difference there. However, for individual visits, and I have found this box plot really interesting with all the outliers. I assume those outliers are due to weather changes, whether that could be humidity, temperature, wind speed, whatever, but a lot of outliers on this one. But for the sunflower versus safflower data here, I had a p-value of 0.040, which shows there is a significant difference between the number of birds you're going to see in total at a sunflower feeder rather than a safflower feeder. But that's just, in my opinion, that's just a lot of house finches and a lot of house sparrows. So as far as my conclusion, sunflower seeds are definitely more popular within bird species, probably due to the high energy content that's in them. However, if I'm giving somebody advice on what seed to buy, without there being a significant difference in the actual number of species, I assume most people that get bird feeders want to see a lot of different type of birds. I think it would be more economically preferred to just get safflower because those weren't getting eaten as quickly, so you wouldn't have to refill as much. That's just my personal opinion, and I'm probably going to take this approach, even though I've always been a black oil sunflower person. And these results were consistent with previous studies that tested a whole bunch of different seeds and food. They said black oil sunflower is the best. Some future improvements on my study are mimic what those other studies do, to use more seed diversity, or even just different types of food in general. And I'd like to do it with seeing different types of fruits for the birds that eat fruit. That would be interesting. I'd like to try different other feeders. at some point. And then I think it's important to test at different times of day and different times of year rather than just evenings in the spring. Because, like I said, I was surprised to not see the blue jays come up because normally in the winter, which obviously that's a season that just happened, I see them at the feeders. And then my biggest mistake was I didn't use the same bird feeder, and I'm worried that hurts me as a physics teacher that I didn't do that. But I just told my wife, just grab a tube feeder while you're at Home Depot. She brought one home. They're super different. One has a platform, one doesn't. And so that kind of bothered me that I wasn't using the exact same feeder, because you should keep everything that you can control, you should keep as the same as possible. So that bothered me a lot. Anyways, that's all. Thank you very much.